to me reading through these hymns, realizing where they have come from in Scripture, and that one is Psalm 91, verse 4. Well, what do you do when the culture around you and your life seems to go south, or when the world is going crazy? Do you rant and rave and get annoyed? Well, I encourage you to get some incredible advice from the psalmist David this morning on how to put life and difficulty into perspective. And his Psalm 37 ought to be required reading for all Christians, as indeed Psalm 91, as Phyllis read for us, should be. Psalm 37 gives us hope for the future while we live in a wicked world. Talks about the wicked and the godly. And Psalm 37 gives us direction for how to live our lives, given the hope that we have in our Messiah, Jesus.
Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away.
It's hard to watch evil people prosper, isn't it? It happens all the time, though. The rich get richer as they step on the backs of people below them. The powerful get more powerful, even though they arrogantly reject God. As for the rest of us, we end up struggling and weak, and we wonder, why doesn't God do something about it? The advice from the psalmist, King David, don't get uptight. Take the long view. If you have ever been trekking in the Rocky Mountains, you know what it is when you set out on a hike. And that is that you should not focus so much on what you're seeing along the way, what is going on or happening along the route, but you should focus on the end goal, or you will never reach that end goal. So take the long view. That's how it should be in life. Though in our minds the wicked seem to prosper all the way to the end, the truth is, from God's end goal perspective, they won't. The psalmist says, they will soon die away.
Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture.
Now, trust means to have confidence in, having confidence that the Lord your God is looking out for your good. Instead of focusing on what the wicked are getting, concentrate on how to live in this life to do good. Trust in the Lord and do good. The psalmist advises us, dwell in the land and live securely. The language in the Hebrew used here is of a shepherd, to live securely. In the Hebrew is a word for to graze or to pasture. So graze in God's presence, pasture in the land. Now the saying, bloom where you are planted, applies here. Don't be looking for satisfaction somewhere apart from with God. And so this ties in with what David writes next.
Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Now, this wonderful word delight in the Hebrew means to be soft and pliable. So we become soft and pliable, which is a good thing, by delighting in the Lord. And when we delight in the Lord, he will give us the desires of our heart. I remember counseling a woman who insisted that God had to give her the desires of her heart. But this is what the Bible claims, she stated. I told her that the Bible doesn't quite say that. For that phrase, he will give you the desires of your heart, can't be plucked out of its wider context.
Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun.
So we can't demand that God give us the desire of our heart. God is not a genie who gives whatever we want. God giving us the desires of our heart is conditional upon us taking delight in him, committing our way to him, trusting him. That lady argued with me incessantly. It was about then that I began to realize I wasn't a counselor. And that counseling with a person who does not want to be counseled is an impossible task. By contrast with that lady's poor theology, when our son Matthew started dating his future wife Louise, they both realized that each of them had for many years, quite separately from each other, adopted this verse as their life verse. They both adopted this verse as their life verse, particularly in the area of dating and courtship and marrying. They adopted this verse in their desire to marry. And so in their desire to marry, they determined that they would not just fall into relationships with anyone, that they wouldn't sleep around, that they wouldn't accept love in opposition to God's ways. Instead, they each decided quite separately from each other, they didn't know each other, that they would live their lives as much as they could, delighting in the Lord, trusting Him to give them the desires of their heart. And that was for a godly Christian partner in life. And what happened? Well, we know God led them to each other. Why did God do that? Because they did as the psalmist had instructed them to do. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to Him. Trust in Him, and He will do this. I once heard the well-known Pastor Chuck Smith say, just enjoy your relationship with the Lord, and He'll take care of the rest. I must hasten to add, though, that we all know exceptions to what we anticipate will be the delights of our heart. God taking care of the rest and giving a person the desire of their heart might not turn out the way that person expected. At the end, it will be good, but not always when they're going through it. As an example, consider the soldier who was injured in the American Civil War in the 1860s. His injuries crippled him for the rest of his life, and he wrote the following famous poem. I asked for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need for God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I have received nothing I asked for, and in all that I hoped for, my prayer is answered. So while God always grants us the desires of our heart, it may be in a different way from what we had anticipated, but it will be in the best way possible. Our prayers will be answered when we trust in Him, when we commit our ways to Him. Once we realize what is going on and that He has us safe in His hands, under His wings, so to speak, we can live in gratitude and peace. Life is not always easy, true, particularly when we see the non-righteous prospering, while the godly are not. But in that context, the psalmist King David advises us,
be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It leads only to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land.
When we see things in the world that are clearly wrong, there is a time for righteous anger, true. But not if by getting angry or fretting we are making things worse. There is wisdom in embracing the disciplines of rest and restraint and resolve, as David talks about. So work for righteousness and justice in our society, certainly. Always stand up for the little person, but do so in a godly way. The Apostle Paul, quoting from the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 32, Proverbs 25, advises us this.
Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, It is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will be heaping burning coals on his head. Do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good.
If you do good to those who hate you, it really messes them over in a good way, doesn't it? We need to have the long view. The long view. Don't be distracted by what is going on around us. We need to not only see evil conquered by good, but also to wait for God to move. So don't jump ahead of his plan. And those who do evil will not last. History has proven it. History has proven it. Every evil person is brought down. It's tough to put up with it in the meantime. But if you put your hope in the Lord, your works will last. David then states,
A little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found.
and then he writes a verse that Jesus later made famous in his Sermon on the Mount.
But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity.
Now, the word meek originally referred to a powerful animal that was under the control of its master. For example, a horse or an ox who would do its master's bidding as the master pulled the rein. And the rein would control the bit in that animal's mouth, moving that animal to and fro. They were called a meek animal. Their great strength was under the control of another. And so a meek person is thus one who places their power under the control of another. And in life, that other being is God. When we put our life under his control, we are placing our will and our power under his control. And the result will be incredible blessing, inheriting the land. In other words, the good things of this world. And that includes peace and prosperity. Now, as I read through Psalm 37, I can see 4 life lessons to glean from the rest of the Psalms. And here's the first one. The good will eventually prevail. Evil and wickedness will fail, while goodness, righteousness, and meekness will prevail. The Lord laughs at those, David goes on to say. He laughs at those who devise evil, because God sees the end goal. And he knows what's in store for the arrogant, the mean-spirited, or the evil individuals of this world. Good will eventually prevail, because the Lord will eventually prevail.
The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend the bow to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose ways are upright. But their swords will pierce their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. Better the little that the righteous have than the wealth of many wicked. For the power of the wicked will be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous.
Better the little that the righteous have than the wealth of many wicked. Why? Because in the end, God, the Lord, upholds the righteous, and peace and prosperity will come for the righteous. Now, we may have nothing as determined by this world, no money, no beauty, no power, no intelligence. The world defines it anyways. But we have something that even though it might seem so little in their eyes, it's all important. And that is a relationship with the God of the universe. And that is enough. God will prevail. That's the first point. The second life lesson. God will eternally triumph. This is the second life lesson.
The blameless spend their days under the Lord's care, and their inheritance will endure forever. In times of disaster, they will not wither. In days of famine, they will enjoy plenty. But the wicked will perish. Though the Lord's enemies are like the flowers of the field, they will be consumed. They will go up in smoke. The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously. Those the Lord blesses will inherit the land, but those he curses will be destroyed.
Now, if there ever was a statement of faith that is both negative and positive, this is it. Now, while we haven't yet experienced the end of our days, we know that at the end of days, those days are in God's hands, not ours. Christians are continually reminded to read the book that we read, the Bible, and to read ahead to the end. That's what we always say to people. And at the end, we see that God triumphs. And we know how the story will end. Jesus will return. The wicked will be dealt with. The righteous will be saved. And God's kingdom will be established on earth. Why will it be established on earth? Because Jesus will have won. In fact, he is already the victor. And so Jesus tells us,
In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world.
Jesus has overcome, and he will make us overcomers in him, through him, and with him. And as the old saying goes, you can take that one to the bank. Cash it in. So 1, good will eventually prevail. 2, God will eternally triumph. And moving on, in the rest of Psalm 37, we read a series of proverbs focusing on God. And from him, number 3, the life lesson is grace will continually flow. In the midst of these frustrating and terrible situations we face, God will give us wisdom to deal with them. We live in a culture that believes it can fix everything. That is, it has a cure for whatever ails us. It's so shocking to the psyche of the people in control in our culture when they can't fix everything. They think that they can't fix everything. This bad, this broken, and it will be a quick, painless, and inexpensive fix. That's what they believe. It's not true. It's fiction, as pandemics and natural disasters prove over and over again. Reality tells us that there are some things that are never going to be fixed or have solutions to. Do you know that COVID-19, coronavirus 19, is named after 2019? There's a COVID-18, COVID-17, COVID-16, COVID-15, COVID-14. Every year, there's a coronavirus. Every year. This one has mutated for whatever reason. But in these times, then, we should be asking for God's grace to carry us through whatever situation we're facing. And this is what we learned when we had our sermon series through the book of Daniel. That Daniel's 3 young friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they found when they were cast into the fiery furnace that they weren't delivered immediately from the furnace. They were delivered from it as they lived through it. For the Lord was with them the whole time. This is similar to what the Apostle Paul said happened to him when he complained to God about having a thorn in his flesh, a messenger of Satan, he called it. A messenger of Satan, a thorn in his flesh that was tormenting him.
3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.
Friends, it's God's grace. It's not our own strength that will see us through bad times.
The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall. For the Lord upholds him with his hand. I was young, and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken, or their children begging bread. They are always generous and lend freely. Their children will be a blessing. Turn from evil and do good. Then you will dwell in the land forever. For the Lord loves the just and will not forsake his faithful ones. Wrongdoers will be completely destroyed. The offspring of the wicked will perish. The righteous will inherit the land and dwell in it forever. The mouths of the righteous utter wisdom, and their tongues speak what is just. The law of their God is in their hearts. Their feet do not slip. The wicked lie in wait for the righteous, intent on putting them to death. But the Lord will not leave them in the power of the wicked, or let them be condemned when brought to trial. Hope in the Lord and keep his way. He will exalt you to inherit the land. When the wicked are destroyed, you will see it. I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a luxuriant native tree. But he too soon passed away and was no more. Though I looked for him, he could not be found.
The Lord makes firm or straight, or in some translation, orders the steps of a good person. A step being, in the dictionary, a movement made by lifting your foot and putting it down in a different place. So steps imply advancement, progress. Now, a step is slow advancement, slow progress. It's not galloping on a horse or flying in a jet plane, advancement or progress, but it's still advancement, progress. And the Lord will order the steps, make firm the steps, make straight the steps of those that he is speaking to, of a good person. The trick is to obey what he says. Ellie Braun lives in Ontario. She decided to go see her mother in the next city from where she lives, and snow has started coming down with a vengeance, and the still small voice inside her head said to her, "Head for home now." Not wanting to disappoint her mother, she kept driving, and after the visit, she decided to leave her mother and to head back to her home. And it took 3.5 hours to make what should have been a 1.5-hour trip. Halfway home, this still small voice, this inner voice said to her, "Turn off at this next exit and sleep at your brother Don's house." Her brother Don lived just over there. And Ellie argued, "No, I want to just get home." Then a hair-raising event unfolded. Just past the exit that the still small voice had told her to take to go to her brother Don's place, a vehicle, camper, lost control and careened across the meridian, aiming straight for her vehicle. Allie recalled, "I couldn't believe my eyes. There was no place to go and nothing I could do. I could only watch mesmerized and hope my vehicle could get out of the other vehicle's way before impact. Luckily, the out-of-control vehicle flew past somehow, missing Ellie and her car only by inches. Showered her car with ice and snow, but Ellie later said, all I could say was, oh my gosh, I learned a valuable lesson that day, that when a still small voice speaks to me, I need to listen. The Lord will make firm or straight or order the steps of a good person. Psalmist King David, by the time of his writing of this psalm, was an old man. That's what he says, filled with the wisdom of observations of life. He had seen God help believers advance in life, and he'd seen the wicked taken down. And he'd seen the believers through life as they delighted in God, trusted in him, walking with him. And so David could write in verse 25,
I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread.
This verse is really the emotional high of this psalm. Think of David's life. He writes, I was young and now I am old. These were not the words of a novice. He was an experienced man. David had seen the fullness of life, good and bad. He had tasted the bitter and the sweet. He had experienced both pleasures and pains. Think about the pains in his life. He was a non-person in the eyes of his father, the only one of the sons not considered worthy of being the future king of Israel, according to his dad. His brothers despised him. King Saul tried to kill him. His wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, turned her back on him, divorcing him and marrying another man. His son, Absalom, attempted to kill him. His people abandoned him. Worst of all, when David sinned badly with Bathsheba and her husband Uriah, God punished him severely for it. And yet, near the end of his life, David looked back on his life and he said, in effect, and I'm making this up, I was young, now I'm old, my hair has turned white, my eyesight has gotten dim, my strength has waned, but guess what? God is still keeping me. David was not saying, I've never been hungry or in need of food. We all have needs occasionally. David was not saying, I've never been in a situation where I needed help. We all need a little help every now and again. David wasn't saying, I've never been desperate We've all been desperate at times. But David was saying, I've never had a moment in my life when God didn't take care of me. And so he could say, based upon reflection on his own life and the life of others, I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. Now, never is a strong word, it's absolute, it's constant. But David could provide expert testimony concerning the faithfulness of God towards a person who delights in him, trusts in him, walks with him, pays attention to his words and to his will. And God is truly, as the Old Testament says, Jehovah Jireh, the God who will provide and never abandon his people. Now we can count on the faithfulness of God because he never lets his people down. God is faithful. And so 1, good will eventually prevail. 2, God will eternally triumph. 3, grace will continually flow. And now to our 4th and final life lesson. You see it up on the screen from Psalm 37. 4, godliness will ultimately satisfy. In other words, living a godly life will be far more satisfactory than any other lifestyle. Even while evil may succeed in its plans, we must believe that not only will good eventually prevail, that God will eternally triumph, and that God's grace will continually flow to us, but that living a good, godly life will ultimately satisfy. I was told recently of the member of one of our Bible study groups, and how this person recently remarked how she's come to see over the years that God knows best. He knows what he's talking about, that he can be trusted. And this young lady said she's come to know that by following God in all the areas of her life and by doing what God wants her to do, that she will be blessed. Godliness will ultimately satisfy. Any life other than a life lived for God will ultimately fail and lead to frustration. Only a life lived in the Lord will succeed in the end. Godliness will ultimately satisfy.
Consider the blameless, observe the upright. A future awaits those who seek peace, but all sinners will be destroyed. There will be no future for the wicked. The salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their stronghold in times of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him.
The bottom line is, where is your refuge? Is it in the stuff of this age, or is it in the things of the Lord? The prosperity of the wicked, though real, in our perception is actually false and fleeting and fake. This is according to Jesus in the gospel books, according to King Solomon in his book of Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes, and here in Psalm 37 with King David. Look at their future, we are told. They will be forgotten. And look at ours. God is with us and will be forever, and our good works will live on forever. God will take care of things in his own time. So just before we close, here is my rendering of what Psalm 37 is saying. I'm not going to put this in print, but here it goes. Leave it alone. Don't fret, don't cry, don't fight, because evildoers are going to be taken care of by God. Envious people never get anywhere. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Don't lower yourself to their level. Don't let them cheat you out of your blessings. The axe will get them. They will be cut down. They will dry up. They will wither away. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Trust in the Lord. Obey his word. Do good. Be good. This is our land anyway. We will dwell here and be fed. Ask God to give you the desires of your heart. Have fun. Serve him with all your heart. Be full of joy. Don't be a sour Christian. Don't be a troublemaker. Commit to the Lord. Put it in the hands of the Lord. Trust him to handle it. Go on, leave it alone. Wait on the Lord. He will show you righteousness. It will be as light. You will have justice. Now rest and let the Lord work. Quit worrying. Leave it with him. God will make you prosper in the way you need to. Go with him. That's it. I'm not a psalm writer. So, we have now come to the end of our study of Psalm 37. In closing then, let's stand and read together some appropriate scripture passages, and then Shannon and Zach will lead us as we sing Because He Lives. So let's read these passages together. If God is for us, who can be against us? No weapon forged against you will prevail. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sins that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Because he lives, let's continue standing.